I
It
never
was a
craved their
Tuesday afternoon in
validation.
late
At
October,
least,
and I
that's
was
what I
cutting
told
through the
myself
Rideau
as I
Centre
stood in
on
my
my way
corner
back from my
office,
dentist
gazing
appointment
out
on
over the
Spark
Seattle
Street.
skyline,
The leaves
the
outside
gentle
were
buzz
already
of the
that
city
deep amber
filtering
color
through
that
the
only
glass
Ottawa does
walls.
right.
An
And I
email
had my
pulsed on
coat
my
half
screen.
buttoned
It was
because
from
the
my
wind
younger
off the river
sister.
had a real bite
Dad
to
lost
it.
his job.
I was not
Mom's
planning to
medical
stop
bills are
anywhere.
drowning us.
I just wanted to
I
get
know
back
you've
to my
got your own
car and drive
expenses,
home before
but
the
if you can
evening
help
rush on the
at all,
Queensway turned
a
everything
laugh
into a
slipped
parking
out of
lot.
me, brittle
That's when I
and
saw my son.
humorless.
He
If
was
only
standing
they
near the
knew.
food court entrance,
12 years ago,
close
when I
to
was
the
just
Tim Hortons,
16,
with his
I
back
stood in the
half
cramped
turned to
living
me.
room of our
He was
townhouse
wearing
in
the same
Tucson,
gray
Arizona.
jacket he'd had
My
since before
acceptance
his
letter
wedding,
to the Rhode Island
the
School
one
of
with the
Design
small
sat on the
tear near
coffee
the left
table,
pocket
and
that
my
he
father's
always
face
said he'd
was
get
thundercloud
fixed.
dark.
He was counting
Altered
something in his
art?
hand. I slowed
That's
down.
not a real
I
career,
thought maybe
Nadia.
he dropped change, or was
He waved
checking
the
if he
letter
had
like
enough
it was
for a coffee.
infected.
But the way
You're
he was
going to
standing,
waste your life
shoulders
chasing
curled
nonsense.
inward,
Grow
head
up.
down,
My
it
mother
didn't look
hovered
like
near the
someone
window,
counting change for a
silent and
double-double.
faded.
It
She
looked
rarely
like someone
spoke up when
counting
he
whether they could
exploded,
afford lunch.
instead folding
My
into
son
herself,
is 39 years old.
leaving me
He's
alone
an
to weather the
electrician
storm.
with 15 years of
I've got
experience.
a partial scholarship,
He earns good
I
money.
murmured,
I
and
walked
I've
up
saved
behind
from
him and said
tutoring
his
and
name.
summer jobs.
He spun around
It's
so
enough.
fast he nearly dropped
No,
everything.
you're going into
And when I
engineering
saw
like
his
your sister.
face,
End of
I felt
discussion.
something cold
But for
settle
the
in my
first time,
chest
it wasn't.
that had nothing to do with
No.
the October wind.
That single
He looked
word cracked
exhausted,
something open in
not
both
tired
of
from
us.
work exhausted,
His face
the other
flushed,
kind, the
fists
kind that
clenched
lives
at his
behind the
sides.
eyes. I
Then
said,
get out.
"Sweetheart, what are you
Think
doing
you're so
here?
independent?
Where's your
Prove
truck?"
it. Just
He
don't
looked
come
down at his
crawling
hand,
back.
then back at me
That
and said,
night, I
took
crammed
the
thrift
bus.
store clothes
I
into
said,
an old duffel
"You
bag.
took the bus from
My sister
Barhaven?
Maria stood in the
That's over
hallway,
an hour each
wide-eyed.
way." He
You're
nodded and said
serious?
something about the truck needing repairs.
Have to be. I
I
can't
said,
keep living a
"How long
life
has
that
it been in the
isn't
shop?"
mine.
He was quiet
As I
for a
zipped up my
moment.
bag,
Then he
Mom
said,
slipped in quietly.
"It's not in the shop,
She
Mom."
didn't say much.
I stood there in the
She
middle of
never
that
did.
food court with people
But she
moving
pressed
around
a
us
small
on every
object into
side.
my palm,
And I looked at
a
my
faded
son, my
velvet
boy,
pouch.
who had helped me
Your Aunt
reshingle my
Sophia
roof
wanted you
2
to have
summers
this
ago,
when the time was
who
right.
called me every
I think
Sunday
that
without
time's
fail,
now.
who had coached his
Inside
nephew's
was a
hockey team
delicate
for 3
silver
seasons,
pendant
and I said
and a
very
tiny
quietly,
folded note
"Then where is
taped
it?"
to a small
He
brass
looked
key.
away. He said,
A safety
"She's been
deposit
driving
box.
it."
I read the
I
letter
said,
later that
"Your
night,
wife has
holed
been
up in
driving
a
your
cheap
truck?"
motel
He
outside
said
Phoenix.
yes.
Nadia,
I said, "What
if
have you
you're
been
reading
driving?"
this,
He
you've
said,
taken the first
"Nothing."
step toward
I
becoming
asked him to
who
find
you were
us somewhere
born
to
to
sit.
be.
We went to a
I'm
corner
proud of you
table near the
already.
window.
And in that
And over the
moment,
next
I
40
knew I'd
minutes,
never return.
my son
Not
told me
to
things
beg,
that I am still to
not
this
to
day
justify,
struggling to fully
only
absorb.
to build.
It had
Always knew
started
you would.
gradually, he said.
That was the first
That's
line
always how
of
it
Aunt
starts,
Sophia's
isn't
second
it?
letter.
Small
The key
things.
unlocks
His
box
wife, I'll call her
132
Renata, had
at
started
Puget Sound
handling the
Credit
household
Union.
finances
Open it
about
when
2
you're
years
ready.
into their marriage,
Inside,
which
you'll
had
find
seemed
what you need to
reasonable at the
begin.
time.
And
She
remember,
was organized.
true art
She
isn't
had a
just about
system.
creating
My
beauty.
son is a
It's
practical
about
man,
finding
not a
value
paperwork
where
man,
others see
and
nothing.
he'd been relieved to hand it over.
With all
His
my
paychecks
love,
from the electrical
Aunt Sophia.
contractor he worked for
The
went
next
into their
morning,
joint
I stepped
account.
into Puget
He'd
Sound
always
Credit
had
Union,
access to it.
my fingers trembling
At
as I
first,
handed
then
over my
Renata's
ID.
mother, I'll call her Vera,
The safety
had moved in
deposit
from
box
Edmonton.
wasn't large,
Just
but what lay
temporarily,
inside
Renata
seemed
said,
impossibly vast.
just until she got
A
back
few
on her
pieces
feet.
of antique silver
That was
jewelry,
14 months ago.
stacks of neatly
Vera had
bound
never
documents,
left.
and a letter
Within a few months of
addressed
Vera
to me in
arriving, the
Sophia's
joint
looping
account was
script.
closed. Renata
The
said they
note
were opening a
unraveled a
new one at a
secret.
different bank,
Aunt
better
Sophia
interest
hadn't
rates,
just been a
she said.
hobbyist who
My
collected
son
pretty
signed the
trinkets.
paperwork she put in
She'd been
front
a
of him one
serious
evening
antique
after dinner
dealer
without
in the
reading it carefully. He trusted her.
1940s,
The new
quietly
account
building a
was in
hidden
Renata's
legacy.
name only.
The silver
His
pieces?
paychecks were
They
redirected
weren't cheap
there through a
souvenirs.
direct deposit
They were
chain she had
genuine,
arranged,
Art Nouveau
telling him
and
the
early
old
Art
account
Deco
had a monthly
designs,
fee.
rare and
I
exquisite.
want you to let that sit
And they've
for a
been
moment.
carefully
His
passed down,
earnings.
one quiet
Going into an
generation
account
after
he could not
another.
access.
Take
When he
these
asked
to
Renata for
Marco
money for
DeLuca
gas, for
at
lunch,
Rain City
for a new
Antiques.
pair of work
He'll
boots after
know
his
their
old ones
true
cracked
worth.
through, she gave him an
My
allowance.
knees nearly gave
That is
out
the
when
only
Marco
word
finished
for
his
it.
appraisal.
$60
The
a
pieces
week.
in the box
For
were
a grown
valued
man,
at over
a licensed electrician,
$430,000.
a homeowner,
0 cents.
$60.
But that
The house they
number
lived in was a
wasn't the most
semi-detached in
life-changing part.
Barhaven that they had bought together in
Marco
2019.
tilted his head
Both
and
names
studied
on the
me.
mortgage.
You have
Both
the eye for
names on
detail
the
most
deed,
people
at
never
least when they
develop.
bought it.
Ever
My
thought
son
of
had
learning
not
the
seen a
trade?
mortgage statement
That
in
was
over
the
a year.
spark.
When he
Marco
asked,
took me under his
Renata
wing,
said she was
teaching
handling
me
it.
everything.
When he asked to see
How
the
to
bank
authenticate
statements,
metals
she
and
said he was being
stones,
paranoid,
how to read
that
provenance
this was
documents,
exactly the kind
how
of
to
controlling
negotiate
behavior
in
that made her
hushed
feel
tones
unsafe.
at auctions,
She
and
used
how to
that
spot
word,
hidden treasures
unsafe,
buried in dusty
about
estate
him asking to
sales.
see his own
I was
financial
hooked.
documents. He had
By
stopped
19,
asking.
I'd launched a
His
small
truck, a
online store for
2020
vintage
Ford
jewelry.
F-150
By
that he
23,
had
I
bought
opened my
himself before
first
the marriage,
brick-and-mortar boutique
that was
in Capitol
registered in
Hill.
his name, Renata,
Now at
had
26,
started
I
driving
own a
after
chain
telling
of
him
private
the insurance
antique
was
galleries
cheaper if she
across
was
the
the
West
primary
Coast with a
driver.
personal net
He had
worth of
believed
over
her.
$14
After a
million,
while, she had simply kept it, and he had gotten
$600,000,
used to taking
0
the bus to job sites,
and not a single
borrowing
headline
a
printed my
coworker's
name.
vehicle when he
My
needed to haul
family still
equipment,
believed I
saying
worked
nothing.
odd retail jobs
said,
or rented a
"How
tiny
long?"
studio
He
apartment
said,
somewhere in
8
Spokane.
months. I
I
said,
preferred it
8
that way.
months you've been taking the
Low
bus to work
profile,
sites in
quiet
January?
growth.
In Ottawa?
Until
He
that
looked at
email
the
from
table.
Maria.
I said,
Dad's job is
"Why
gone.
didn't you tell me?"
Mom's drowning in
And this
hospital
is the
bills.
part that broke
Could you
my
help?
heart completely.
Even just a little?
He said,
I stared
"Because
at the
every
message,
time I thought about
then
calling
picked up
you,
my phone.
Vera would be
Hey
somewhere in the
Maria,
house,
bring Mom
and
and
Renata
Dad to
had
my
said that
office
you were never
tomorrow.
going to accept
Your
her,
office?
that you were looking
Like
for
the
reasons to
consignment shop you
interfere,
used to help
and
out
I
at?
didn't want to make things worse."
No, my real
She said
office.
if I went to you,
Rainier
it would
Tower.
prove that
I'll
I
text
wasn't
the
committed
address.
to the marriage.
Maria
My
laughed
son had been made to
uncertainly.
feel that calling his
We'll
own mother
see.
was a betrayal.
Rainier Tower? You
I
can't
reached
just
across
walk
that
in there
table and I put my
pretending.
hand over his
I
and I
smiled,
said,
glancing
"Listen
at
to
the
me.
sweeping city
I'm not going
views
to tell you
outside
what
my
to do,
windows.
but I am
I
going to
bought
ask you
Rainier
one
Tower
question,
outright last
and I
spring.
need you to answer it honestly.
Trust me, Maria.
Are you
They'll
happy?"
let me in.
He didn't answer
Just
for a
be
long
there.
time. Then he shook his head.
9
I said,
a.m.
"Then let
And
me help
Maria,
you.
tell Mom and
That's all
Dad to
I'm
bring
asking."
every page of
I
their
drove
mortgage
him home that
paperwork.
afternoon back to the house in Barhaven
Absolutely
because he had a tool
imbecile.
belt and some equipment
The
he'd
next
left there
morning,
that he
I
needed for
stood
a
at the
job
window
the
of
next
my
morning.
office,
Renata's
top
car
floor
and
of
his
Rainier
truck were both in the
Tower,
driveway.
watching
Vera's
as my
curtain
family's
moved in the
weathered
front
blue
window when we
SUV
pulled up.
pulled into the
My
private
son went
entrance
inside to
below.
get his things.
Even 30
I sat in my
stories up,
car and I
I
looked at
could
that
sense
house.
the uncertainty
Both their
in their
names on the
movements
deed.
as a
I made
uniformed
note of
security
that.
guard stepped
That evening
forward,
I sat at my
guiding
kitchen
them
table in
past the main
Canada,
lobby
and
to
I
the
thought very
executive
carefully about
elevator
what I was going
reserved
to
for
do.
only a
I am
handful of
63 years
occupants.
old.
A
I
gentle
worked for
chime from the
31 years in
intercom
HR
broke my
management for the
focus.
federal government.
Ms. Rousseau, your
I know
family
how
has arrived,
documentation
my
works.
assistant said.
I know how
Send them
processes
in,
work.
I replied,
And I know that when
my
someone
voice
has spent
calm as I
months
turned
gradually
from the
removing
window
another
to
person's
face the
access
door.
to their own money,
The moment
their
they
own
crossed the
vehicle,
threshold,
and their own
I
family,
saw the shock
it
ripple
does
through
not
them.
happen by accident.
Dad froze in
It
the
is a
center of the
system,
sleek
and
office,
systems leave
eyes
evidence.
darting over the
The
polished
next
walnut
morning I called
floors
my
and
son's
floor-to-ceiling
direct deposit
windows,
bank not to
framing a
access any
sunlit Seattle
account.
skyline.
I want to be clear
Mom
about
clung
that,
to the doorframe,
but to ask a
her
general
gaze sweeping
question about
across the
how a
space in
direct
stunned
deposit
silence.
redirect is set up
Maria stood
and what
stiffly behind
documentation it
them,
requires.
blinking rapidly,
The
as if
information I
trying to
received
erase
was
the scene
useful.
by sheer
Then I called
willpower.
a family lawyer
They'd
here
come
in Ottawa.
expecting a cramped
I am not going
consignment
to
shop,
name her, but she has
a
been
shared
practicing
workspace
family
at
and
best,
financial law
not
for
a
over 20
high-ceilinged
years,
gallery
and
office
she had heard
hybrid
this type
adorned
of
with
situation
rare Art
before.
Nouveau
She
sculptures and
used a
glass
specific
cases
term for
showcasing
what I was
antique silver
describing:
and precious gems,
coercive
not
financial
a
control.
custom-designed rosewood desk,
In
once
Ontario
part
and
of a
across
Rockefeller
Canada,
estate,
family courts take this very
and certainly
seriously,
not this panoramic
particularly
view of
when there is
Seattle,
shared property
sprawling
involved.
beneath me like a
I asked
quiet
her what we
triumph.
needed. She said,
Nadia? Mom whispered,
documentation,
voice
bank
trembling.
statements if he
What
can obtain
is all
them,
this?
mortgage records,
I gave her a gentle
proof
smile.
of vehicle ownership
This
and
is my
registration,
office. Welcome
and
to
anything that
Rousseau Fine
establishes a
Art and
pattern.
Antiquities.
My son, it turned
My
out,
father's
had kept more
expression
than he
darkened,
realized.
cycling from
He had old
confusion
text
to
messages on his phone
indignation to
where
rage
Renata
in
had
seconds.
explicitly told him she was
No,
managing the money
he barked,
and that he
stabbing
didn't
a
need
finger
access.
in my direction.
He had emails from his
You work
contractor
retail?
employer confirming
You
his
live in a
salary
tiny
over
apartment?
$94,000
He
the previous
scoffed.
year.
I've seen you post
He had the
pictures of
original
cheap
mortgage
dinners and
documents from
laundromats.
2019
I stepped closer
showing
to a
both
glass
names.
case and tapped
He had
lightly
the
on the
vehicle
surface,
registration for the
indicating
truck
a
in his name
delicate Art
alone.
Deco brooch
And he had something
I'd
else
once
he hadn't
purchased
thought
for
was
just
significant, a voicemail from
$700,
Vera,
0
left
cents.
3 months ago, in which
Actually,
she
I'm
said
the
very
CEO and
clearly
founder of the
that
largest
if he
private
ever thought
antique
about
brokerage
running
on
to
the
his
West
mother
Coast.
or a
Those
lawyer,
posts,
Renata
they
would
were
make sure he
staged,
regretted
carefully
it.
curated
I want you to
fiction.
hear that again.
Maria's
A
mouth fell
voicemail
open,
threatening him
but
against
no
seeking
words
legal help.
emerged.
My
The
lawyer
Rainier
called
Tower,
that quite
she
useful.
finally
We
stammered.
moved carefully.
Belongs to
and
me,
we moved quietly.
I finished softly.
My son continued
Technically,
going to work,
the property was under the
continued living in
firm's
the
name,
house,
but since I
said
owned
nothing
the
to
firm,
Renata
it was
about what
mine
we
all
were
the
doing.
same.
I know
That's
some
when Dad
people watching this
exploded.
will say he
You
should have
kept
left
this from us?
immediately.
We're your
I understand
family?
that feeling. But leaving
Secretly,
a shared
what?
property without legal
What?
advice can
I cut him
complicate
off.
property claims.
Secretly
And our
succeeding.
lawyer was very
Building
clear
something
that
real.
staying put in the short
Proving
term
you
while we
wrong.
built our case
I
was
walked
the
back
right
to my
approach.
desk, sat
This
down,
was
and
not
nodded toward the
weakness.
folder
This
clutched
was
in his hand.
strategy. Over the
Now,
following
let's talk
3
about
weeks,
your
my
mortgage.
son gathered what
A heavy
he could.
silence filled the
He
room.
opened a new
Dad's
personal
anger
account at a different
evaporated
bank,
into
just
stunned
his name,
quiet.
and arranged
Mom
with his
reached out,
employer to split
fingertips
his
tracing
direct
the polished
deposit
edge of
going
my
forward,
desk, searching
with the
for
new
proof
portion
this
going
wasn't
somewhere
some
Renata
impossible
had no
dream.
access to.
And if you
This
think
was
that
entirely
conversation
legal.
was intense,
His money,
just wait
his
until you hear
choice.
what I told them
He
next.
also,
Stay
on our lawyer's
tuned.
advice, began
There's more
quietly
to how I
documenting the
turned
daily
silence
situation,
into power.
not
Maria
secretly
just stood
recording
there, lips
conversations that
parted,
has its own
staring at
legal
the original
complications in
Chihuly
Ontario,
sculpture
but
shimmering
keeping a
beside
written
my
log,
espresso station.
date, Time.
I opened my
What was
laptop,
said or
clicked into
withheld.
my business dashboard,
$60
and slowly
allowance.
pivoted the screen
truck.
toward them.
The request to
Since
see
we're being
bank
truthful
statements that
now,
were refused.
here's my current balance.
Every entry dated,
$14
detailed,
million,
saved in an email he sent to himself. I will tell you the moment I knew we had everything we needed.
$242.00.
I was parked down the street
Mom
from
let
their
out a
house
sharp
on a Saturday
gasp,
morning.
her hand
I
flying
know
to
how
her
that
chest.
sounds, but my lawyer had
Dad's fingers
suggested
whitened around
that
the
if the
arm of
truck
the
was
sleek
being
leather
used
chair.
without my son's
Maria
consent,
dropped the folder she'd
a
been clutching like a
time-stamped
lifeline.
photo of the
The same
registration
fancy leather
versus who
portfolio
was
she'd
driving it
proudly
could be
shown off
relevant.
last Christmas
And I watched
after
Vera
her big
come out of the
promotion.
house, get
This,
into my
I
son's
said calmly,
F-150
sliding a thick file
and drive
across the
away.
desk,
His
is
truck,
why you're here.
registered
You're
in
3
his
months
name,
behind
without
on your
his
mortgage.
knowledge or permission
Foreclosure
that day.
proceedings
I
have
photographed
started.
the plate and the
Maria
time.
blinked rapidly.
I sent it to our lawyer.
How?
She
How
wrote
do you
back
know
within
that?
the hour.
I
She
didn't
said,
flinch.
"Good. We're
I
ready
own
to
a
move."
controlling stake
We
in
arranged a
Cascadia
meeting.
Trust. Your
Not a
mortgage lender.
confrontation at the house
I
on
know everything.
63. Not foolish, but a formal
I
meeting
turned
at
my
our
gaze to
lawyer's
Dad.
office on Elgin Street.
Your risky day
with Renata
trades,
notified in
Mom's
writing
medical bills,
that the meeting concerned
then to
shared
Maria,
property and financial
and your
matters
condo flip
related
in
to the
Capitol
marriage.
Hill,
She had the
completely
right to bring her own
underwater.
lawyer.
For
She
a
brought
moment,
Vera
the
instead.
room was
That
painfully
told our lawyer
silent,
everything she
except
needed
for
to
the
know
quiet
about how
hum
this
of the
household
city
operated.
outside.
I will not
Finally,
describe
Dad's
the
voice
entire
scraped
meeting
its way
because
out.
some of what was
You
said is
knew we were
private to my
drowning and
son.
said nothing?
But I will tell you
We're
the
your
key
family,
moments.
Nadia.
When our lawyer
I
laid out
rose
the
slowly,
documented salary
placing
versus
both
the
palms
$60
firmly on
weekly
the cool
allowance,
surface of my
Renata
rosewood
said my
desk.
son had agreed to it.
Do you remember
Our
the
lawyer
night you
asked
told
for
me to
that agreement
leave?
in writing. There
Don't
was
come
none.
crawling back when you
When our
fail.
lawyer raised the truck
Those were your
registration and the
words.
photographs of
We were
Vera
trying to
driving it
protect
without
you, Dad
documented
protested,
permission,
eyes
Vera
narrowing
began
in
to speak.
defensiveness.
Our lawyer addressed
No,
her directly
I
and
said,
said,
my voice calm
"You
but
are not a
implacable.
party to this
You were
marriage or
trying
this
to control
property.
me.
You are here
That's
as
not
a
the
guest.
same thing."
I would
I
ask
walked
you
over
to
to the
allow the
vast
relevant
window,
parties
the
to
Seattle
speak."
skyline
Vera did
blazing
not
with
say much
sunlight,
after that.
the Space
When
Needle
our lawyer
visible in
raised
the
the voicemail
distance,
and played it
a symbol
on
of the
speaker,
empire I'd
in that
quietly
office,
built
Renata
over the
went
past
pale.
decade.
The voicemail
10
where Vera
years, I
threatened my
continued
son
softly.
against seeking
No
legal
help.
help constituted,
No faith.
our lawyer
Just me,
explained,
my instincts,
potential
and the
witness
key Aunt Sophia
intimidation.
gave me.
She
Mom's
recommended
eyes
that my
snapped up,
son's employer's
confusion
legal
written
department
across
be
her
made
face.
aware. As my son
Sophia,
worked on
what
federally
did she give
regulated
you?
job sites
Faith,
where such
I
matters
said,
have specific
turning back
reporting
toward them.
implications,
She believed
did
in me
not
when
make this
none
as
of
a
you
threat.
did.
She
She
made it
knew
as
I'd build
information.
something real.
The mood in
I
that
let
room
my gaze
changed.
sweep across their
What
stunned
followed
faces.
was not a dramatic courtroom
Every
scene.
holiday you
It was
mocked me,
paperwork,
still
and it
playing
took
with
several
antiques,
weeks,
Nadia?
and it was
Come
exhausting
work as
and
Maria's
expensive.
assistant, Nadia.
And there were nights my
Maria
son stayed
dropped
at
her
my
eyes to
house
the
in
floor.
Canada and barely
But now,
slept.
I
But here's
continued,
what was
voice
agreed
low
to,
and steady.
with both lawyers
Now
present
that you've seen
and
my
everything
bank balance,
signed.
suddenly
Renata
I'm
would
worth your
restore
time
my
again.
son's full access
Suddenly,
to the joint
I'm
finances
family.
until the
My
formal
father sat up
separation
straighter,
agreement
slipping
was
into his
completed.
business tone.
She would return
We can
sole
talk about
use
all
of the
this
truck
later.
to
Right
my
now, we
son
need to.
immediately, within
Stop
48
right there.
hours of signing.
I cut in, raising my
She would
hand,
provide
my
full
voice
mortgage
cool as
statements for the
steel.
past 14 months.
Before you say anything
And
else,
Vera would
let me
vacate
show
the
you
shared
something.
marital home
I
within
pressed
30
a
days,
discreet
as
button
she
on
had
my
no
desk.
legal tenancy
Behind me,
agreement
the massive
and was
digital
there at
screen
Renata's
embedded in the
invitation,
wall flickered
which
to
my
life.
son had never
One
formally
by one,
consented to in
file
writing.
windows
My
blossomed
son
across
did not
the
get everything
display.
he deserved.
And what I
The legal
revealed next
process is
changed
slow and
everything,
settlement is
for them
imperfect.
and for
And
me.
yes, there are people
If
watching
you're as
this
curious
who
as
will
they
feel
were,
that
make
Renata
sure
and
to
Vera face no
subscribe
real
so you don't
consequences
miss
for
the
what they
next
did.
chapter of
I
how
felt that way
secrets
too.
became my
On
greatest
many
power.
nights. The
Bank
family lawyer was
statements,
honest with
property
me about the
deeds,
limits of what
loan,
civil family law can
defaults,
accomplish compared to what
investment
justice
records.
feels like.
This,
But here is
I
what
said
is true
steadily,
today.
sweeping my hand
My
toward
son
the
is
glowing
living in a
screen,
rental
is
apartment in Gloucester
everything.
that he chose
Every loan,
himself.
every debt,
He is
every
driving his
bad
own
decision.
truck. His
The
paycheck
total
goes
amount
into
to
his own
wipe the
account.
slate clean and
He is
stabilize
sleeping,
everything is
finally,
exactly
like a person who has set down something very heavy.
$2,400,000.
He is
0
coaching
cents.
his nephew's hockey team again.
0.
He called me last
My
Sunday.
father's eyes
Same
flickered
as
with
always.
something I hadn't seen
His
in a
voice sounded
decade.
like him again.
Hope.
Last month he
Maria's
came
lips
over and we
parted,
raked the leaves
caught
in my
between
backyard in
disbelief
Canada
and
together.
relief.
And when we
Mom
came
reached
inside for
out,
tea,
brushing
he
her
sat at my
fingers
kitchen
lightly
table
over the
and
back
said,
of my hand.
"Mom,
I
I'm
pulled
sorry
away
I
gently.
didn't call sooner."
I've had
I
that money
said,
set aside in a
"You called
reserve
when when you were
account for
ready.
years,
That's
I
enough.
continued.
He said,
Every time the
I kept
foreclosure
thinking there
letters
was
came,
something wrong with
every
me,
time things
that
spiraled,
I was the
I was
problem.
watching,
I said,
waiting.
That's what they
Waiting
wanted you
for
to
what?
think.
Maria
He was
whispered,
quiet for a bit,
to see if
and then
any
he
of you
said,
would change.
What made you
If
follow
you'd
up
take
that day at the Rideau
responsibility.
Centre?
But you never
I didn't
did.
say very much.
I rose from my
I
chair
said,
again,
You
letting
were counting
silence
coins for
expand
lunch.
in the room until
You,
it
who
pressed
always brought
against the glass
leftovers in a
walls.
container because you said
Instead,
food
you
court
borrowed
prices were
more,
highway
mortgaged
robbery.
the house
He
again,
laughed.
blamed bad
First
luck.
real laugh I'd heard
I
from him in
crossed the
longer
room
than I
and
could
sank
say.
back into my
If you are
desk
watching
chair,
this and something in
sunlight
this story
glinting
feels
off the
familiar,
Chihuly sculpture
I want to
behind
say
me.
one thing.
Here's what's
Financial
going to happen,
control
I
is
said,
abuse.
my tone
It
crisp.
does not
I'll
require
clear
raised
every
voices
debt,
or
I'll
broken
save the
furniture.
house, and I'll
It is
set up a trust
quiet,
to keep all of
and
you
it is
financially
slow,
secure.
and it is designed to make
Voices
the person
burst out in
experiencing it feel like
overlapping
they are the
relief.
unreasonable one.
I lifted my
If
hand
someone
again,
you love
and the
has
room
stopped
fell
talking about
silent.
money, stopped
But,
mentioning
I
their
said
paycheck,
firmly, there are
started seeming
conditions.
apologetic about
The
small
air went
purchases.
still.
Pay attention.
First, I said,
Ask
meeting
a simple
Dad's
question.
eyes. You
Sit with
retire.
them in a food
No more
court and
stocks,
listen.
no more crypto
That is
schemes,
all
just
I did.
rest.
I just listened.
You've earned it,
and
but
then I
you've
made
cost
some
us
phone
enough.
calls. My son
His
is
jaw
going to be all
clenched,
right.
eyes dropping.
I know that now.
Second,